there soon after then ends up into that crash.
And this is Santa Monica Boulevard, one of the busiest thoroughfares through our city, from Hollywood all the way over towards the west side, that east-west thoroughfare that so many of us take, where there really isn't a freeway alternative except for the 10 well to the south of this stretch. Busy out there for sure. We are getting reports that vehicular traffic, air traffic is at its highest since before the pandemic, and that's certainly the case on this getaway weekend. And again, it appeared that the two drivers, and you're going to see this collision coming up here, Alex and Christine, the two drivers of the vehicles that were involved in this crash were up, they were alert, although in the upper left corner of your screen you could see an RA. The LAFD has arrived on scene to check on potential.
There it is.
Right there.
There it is.
So he got, the driver, the alleged DUI driver, was T-boned there by both of those vehicles, that white sedan and that dark-colored mid-size SUV. Those are the two vehicles that were involved. They were going against traffic. They had the green light. The woman who was being pursued, she went through the intersection on the red light and was hit.
And we don't know also, she may be so under the influence of things, she may not be feeling pain from that crash that she may be feeling tomorrow as well.
No question,
because
she
got hit. She bore the brunt of that crash.
You know, I'm not so sure how much that dark SUV was hit, but that fire department vehicle there has pulled up there, and I'm wondering if they're tending to someone or checking out that dark SUV, or it's actually therefore the driver of the car, the suspected DUI driver. It's kind of hard to tell what's going on there, or if they just came there out of response in case they were needed.
Yeah, that white sedan had the majority of the front end damage there. You saw it there pulled up to the right on the top of your monitor there. But the driver, the driver that was being pursued, that female, you could see a badly damaged car facing the wrong way up on the curb there in this busy intersection through Hollywood.
You know, as I look at this, you know, this issue of a suspected DUI driver really does hit close to home for us here at Fox 11. Having our own colleagues recently hit by a suspected DUI driver. Our colleagues were reporting on assignment in Hollywood as well. They were on Hollywood Boulevard near Hollywood and Highland when a suspected drunk driver jumped the curb, hit them, injuring 6 people. Our Hal Eisner, our reporter, just interviewed 2 women who were also hit. Hal just returned to work after, what, 9 weeks, I think, of care and in the hospital and rehab. Our photographer, Joab Perez, is still not back to work. So we realize how dangerous these can be and how affecting they are to people's lives.
Right, and the long-term impact on people's lives as well, which we've talked a lot about with Hal. But sometimes you see these stories, okay, on to the next pursuit, on to the next story, and you don't think about the long-term impact on people as well. And another thing that we saw in that story and this story, you often think of DUI as something that would be late at night. People are out at the bars, people are out partying, and that's what leads to it. But in both of those instances, this is broad daylight, middle of the afternoon, and yet that doesn't seem to be stopping people from being impacted. And so here's a look at the crash itself one more time.
Boom, yeah, both of those vehicles T-boned the suspect there, and thankfully there weren't any pedestrians like what we saw with.
Rick, we see a stretcher coming out now, so let's see where they go with that stretcher. Obviously, there's somebody in some kind of need of medical attention, or perhaps need to be stabilized and checked out to make sure they are indeed okay. You know, we saw that car, that T-bone there, and you do wonder, what are the extent of the injuries? And when you see that fire department vehicle right there, it tells you there's more to that wide shot that we see.
It's possible it could be, as you had mentioned, it could be the suspect, because the suspect, I do not believe, has been taken away yet. And the gurney's halfway between that SUV there. It looks like the driver, the female passenger, the female driver of that SUV is out taking some photos, but it looks like they're going towards that LAPD unit, where I believe that that alleged DUI suspect who was being pursued is going to need the treatment, and she did take the brunt of this. Again, they lit her up. She did not yield. The pursuit was on. Apparently they tried a spike strip, perhaps a pit maneuver that we saw another one that it appeared was going to be attempted. Very hard to do on a busy street like that, but we've seen it before.
Right.
And it does appear that they are looking at that LAPD unit, and that is where the individual, that suspect is.
And I'm not saying it was unjustified, but you know, that arrest was also rough physically.
It was.
And that may have, and she was clearly resisting, but that may have roughed her up a bit physically as well.
So let's watch, and as you can see, it definitely appears that the paramedics from the Los Angeles Fire Department are waiting on perhaps transporting the individual who was being pursued from that LAPD unit into the RA there at the intersection.
Well, you think of the kind of injuries you can have with some kind of accident like that: head injuries, neck injuries, back injuries. And then the person, too, we talked about being perhaps under the influence of something that could also be a reason for medical attention. You know, I think back to what you were saying, Alex, and with our own colleagues being hit in broad daylight. A DUI driver jumping the curb in this situation. Here you have a car that was T-boned and ran into two other cars. But I'm thinking, too, of the other drivers. They seem to be okay. If there are passengers in their cars, they don't need medical attention from, say, an ambulance. But think, too, how this changes your weekend.
Oh, yeah.
The car now, you've got to deal with insurance or repairs, or is it drivable?
Right.
That does alter, and also the fear after having been in an accident, the fear and the psychology.
Very scary.
That, you know, you now have to live with on this Friday night as you were going about your business.
Right, the feeling.
And it does look like it is that female driver that was being pursued by the Los Angeles Police Department that is being treated and likely will be taken to a nearby hospital to get checked out.
Yeah, and for many people, this is the first holiday weekend that they've had in a very long time, where they're headed out on the road and doing road trips, and now all of a sudden you are a part of a crime scene investigation and your car may be totaled. So you feel for those innocent people who are just going about their business on a Friday afternoon.